For today, we're going to start looking at what we call functions. Okay, so we call functions. Usually, you guys have seen it as y equals something. All right, now we're going to start moving into what if it's not just the y? In this case, I'm going to call it function of g. Interesting part is that notice how I have g of x. This is how we're actually going to read this, g of x. But then on the instructions here, I'm asking to find g of 4. Now, when you look at the two things that I just wrote, g of x, g of 4, all I really said is that I want you to find this function. What is this equal to? But the value of x is equal to 4. That's basically what I said. Because I have g of x, I gave you something about g of x. Let me highlight that. Right, I give you something about g of x. G of x equals something, but then I want you to find g of 4. So again, all I said was x is equal to 4. So g of 4, let me write this, g of 4 is going to equal to 4 to the third minus 3 times 4 squared. Notice I just rewrote g of x, but instead of x, I wrote a 4. Now, order operations. I know I have to do groups first. I know some of you guys know this as PEMDAS, right? Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Some of you guys know it as PEMDAS. Some of you guys know it as GEMS. Groups first, then exponents, then multiplication or division, and then last part is subtraction or addition. Now, whichever method we know we have to do in this case exponent first. So I have to find out what's 4 to the third and 4 to the second. Now 4 to the third, right? 4 multiplied by itself 3 times is equal to 64. So I have that this is 64 minus 3 times 16. The 16 because it was 4 squared, right? 4 multiplied by itself 2 times. Notice I did my exponents. Then I see that I have a subtraction and I have a multiplication. Right? Order operations, I have to multiply it before I subtract. I know 3 times 16 is 48. So I have this as 64 minus 48. Notice I did a multiplication before I subtracted. Now 64 minus 48 is equal to 16. So my answer here will just be 16. Let's take a look at another example. Let's take a look at number 22 in our notes. Now this thing is called h of x. Our functions now are going to be named like g, f, h, right? Different names because later on we're going to start combining them. I might give you two functions in one same question. So we're going to start able to combine them. All right, so h of x is equal to 4x plus 3. But I want you to find out h of 8. So the variable, in this case, the variable is x, right? The letter I'm using here. Now, don't think it's always x. Sometimes it could be n, it could be anything. Now, the variable is 8. So let me rewrite this as h of 8, because that's what I'm finding it here. It is 4 times 8 plus 3. Notice I use the dot as a times. Some people actually like parentheses, so let me go with that. Let me use parentheses. 4 times 8 plus 3. I see multiplication and addition. I know I have to multiply first. So I'm going to say this is equal to 32 plus 3. Right, 4 times 8 is 32. So I did my multiplication first. Adding and subtracting is the very last thing that I do. 32 plus 3, that's 35. So this is how we're going to evaluate these functions. Now, looking at question number 23 and 24, I'm going to give you guys a graph. And here I'm asking for 23, solve for f of 1. Okay, so what does that mean? F of 1, right? Usually we use the word f of x, but here I'm asking you to find f of 1. So what's the y value when x is equal to 1? The way we read graphs, let me find out where x equals 1. So on the x-axis, I see 1. It's this point right here. Where does this line intersect my graph? If I follow I see this point, right? If I was to ask you guys, what are the coordinates of that point? The coordinates of that point are 1, -3. Now, remember a few seconds ago, I said f of 1 is basically what's the y value when x is equal to 1? So my answer here will be -3. All right, I found on my x-axis 1. I follow my line to see where my graph intersects, and it intersects it when y is equal to -3. Now let's take a look at question number 24. Now here I'm asking for f of -1. So be careful on the sign. -1 on the x-axis is right here. Now here my graph is above, so it crosses right there. You guys can see my point. Let me emphasize, I'm looking at that point. The coordinate of that point are 1, 5. So when I ask you to solve for f of -1, 5, my bad. When I ask you to solve for f of -1, I'm basically asking, what's the value of y when x equals -1? Okay, so in this case, the value of y is 5. My answer in this case is going to be 5. Let me zoom out. That's basically what we did today.